Gold is a heavy thing, but it's never heavier than when it's covered in someone else's blood. Silas Thorne knew the weight of many things. He knew the weight of a Spencer rifle. He knew the weight of a saddle after 12 hours in the Nevada sun. And he knew the weight of a memory he'd been trying to bury for 20 years. He lived out in the high basin, a place where the wind didn't just blow. It hollowed you out. He had a small ranch and a silence so deep you could hear your own heartbeat against the ribs. He liked it that way. People brought noise. Noise brought trouble. Silas was out mending a fence line near the Devil's Throat, a jagged canyon that ate cattle and men alike. The heat was a physical hand pressing down on his neck. That's when he saw it. A flash, not the shimmer of heat, but the hard, unforgiving glint of metal. He rode closer, his hand instinctively drifting to the peacemaker at his hip. In the scrub brush lay a horse, its lungs blown, already attracting the flies. And 10 yards away, a woman. She wasn't moving. Her dress was a ruin of blue calico, stained gray by the alkaline dust. She was face down in the dirt. Her fingers clawed into the earth like she was trying to hold on to the world before it spun away. Silas dismounted. His boots crunched on the dry earth. He didn't rush. Out here, a trap looked a lot like a tragedy. He rolled her over gently. She was young, maybe 25. Her lips were cracked and bleeding. Her skin the color of parched parchment. But it was what she was clutching that made Silas's stomach turn. A heavy leather pouch. It was tied to her waist with frayed rope, and she held it to her chest with both hands, even unconsciously. He picked her up. She was light, far too light, like a bird with broken wings. As he lifted her, her eyes flickered open for a heartbeat. They weren't blue or brown. They were a haunted, glassy green. "Take it back," she whispered. Her voice sounded like grinding stones. "Please, Silas, take it back. It's cursed." He froze. He hadn't told anyone his name in 5 years. The cabin was cool, but the air inside felt thick. Silas laid her on the cot near the window. He didn't touch the gold bag. He set it on the heavy oak table, where it sat like a lead weight, mocking the humble room. He spent the next 4 hours doing what he knew how to do. He boiled water. He tore clean strips of linen. He bathed the fever from her brow. He watched the way her hands kept twitching, reaching for the empty air where the pouch had been. Outside, the sun began to die, painting the Nevada sky in shades of bruised purple and dry blood. He sat at the table and finally looked at the gold. He poured one coin out. It felt oily, not with grease, but with something else. It was cold, even in the heat of the room. He remembered the stories of Blackwood. They said the gold there wasn't mined. It was harvested from a place where the sun never reached. They said every ounce cost a soul. Silas didn't believe in ghost stories, but he believed in men. And he knew that men would burn the world down for a bag this heavy. Around midnight, she stirred. She sat up with a jolt. A scream died in her parched throat. "It's gone!" she gasped, her hands clutching at her waist. "He's coming for it. He's coming." "Drink," Silas said. His voice was a low rumble, like distant thunder. He handed her a tin cup of water. She drank like she was trying to put out a fire inside her. When she finished, she looked at him, really looked at him. "You're the one," she whispered. The man who walked away from the judge. Silas felt a cold finger slide down his spine. "I don't go by that life anymore." "It doesn't matter," she said. Her name was Clara. She had been a ward of Judge Sterling, the man who owned half the territory and wanted the other half. She told him about the room under the judge's cellar, about the gold that came in the night. "The judge says the gold is the earth's blood," Clara said, her voice trembling. "But I saw where it comes from, Silas. He's not mining it. He's taking it from the graves of the families who wouldn't sell their land. He melts down their wedding rings. Their history. It's cursed because it's built in the end of everything good." She reached out and grabbed his forearm. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "He'll kill me to get it back. Not for the money, but because if the circuit judge sees these stamps, if the world sees where this gold really comes from, his empire falls. Take it back to the canyon. Silas, bury it. Let the earth have its dead back." Silas looked at the bag. He thought about his quiet life. He thought about the peace he'd fought so hard to find. I'm just a rancher, Clara, he said softly. No, she said, looking at the scars on his hands. You're the only man who ever survived him. Silas didn't answer. He stood up and walked to the door, looking out into the darkness. He knew what was coming. If you've ever felt the weight of a secret you couldn't keep, or if you've ever stood your ground when the world told you to run, hit that like button. It helps these stories find the people who need them. And if you want to see if Silas Thorne still has the steel in his blood to face the judge, make sure you're subscribed. Now, take a sip of whatever you're drinking, settle in, and tell me in the comments, what's the one thing you'd never sell your soul for? The next 3 days were a slow-motion nightmare. Silas didn't cut wood. He didn't check the cattle. He sat on the porch with his Winchester across his knees, watching the ridge road. Clara moved through the house like a ghost returning to life. She cleaned. She cooked a meager stew of salt pork and beans. She didn't talk much, but her eyes were always on the door. Every time a hawk screamed or the wind rattled the shutters, she flinched. Silas watched her. He saw the way she looked at the gold pouch, not with greed, but with a deep physical revulsion. It was a bag of sins, and she had carried it across the desert to the only man who knew what to do with a sin. On the 4th evening, the air went still. The birds stopped singing. Out here, silence was a warning. Silas saw the dust first. A thin, tan ribbon rising from the ridge road. 3 riders. They weren't riding like lawmen. They were riding like owners. Get under the floorboards, Silas said. His voice was flat. No emotion. Silas. Now, Clara. He watched her disappear beneath the heavy rug. He moved the table over the trapdoor. Then, he sat back down on the porch. He poured a cup of coffee. It was cold. He didn't care. The riders pulled up 20 yards from the house. In the center was a man in a black duster, his face obscured by a wide-brimmed hat. To his left was a man with a double-barreled shotgun across his saddle. To the right, a younger man, his hand hovering over a nickel-plated revolver. The man in the center pushed his hat back. It was Elias Sterling, the judge's son. He had his father's eyes, pale, cold, and empty as a dry well. Thorne, Elias said. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. My father said you were still out here, playing at being a hermit. You're looking old. Old beats dead, Silas replied. He didn't move the rifle. It sat on his lap, pointed at the dirt. What brings you to my patch of dust, Elias? A thief, Elias said. A little bird flew out of the nest with something that doesn't belong to her. We tracked her horse to the canyon, tracked her boots to your gate. Lots of boots out here, Silas said. Mostly mine. The younger rider spat in the dirt. Don't play us, old man. We know she's here, and we know she has the bag. Silas took a sip of the cold coffee. He let the silence stretch. He let it get uncomfortable. He let them wonder if he was afraid. I found a woman, Silas said finally. She was dying. I gave her water. I gave her a place to rest. But as for a bag, all I saw was a woman running from a monster. I reckon if she had gold, she'd have bought a better horse. Elias's smile vanished. The air changed. It became the kind of silence that happens right before a lightning strike. Step aside, Silas, Elias said, his voice dropping an octave. We're going in that house. If we find her and we find that gold, this cabin becomes your coffin. Silas stood up. He did it slowly. His joints popped, but his eyes were locked on Elias. He didn't raise the rifle. He just held it at his side. This is my land, Silas said. The law says you need a paper to enter a man's home, and your father isn't the law out here. The desert is. I'm the law today, the rider with the shotgun said, beginning to level. Silas didn't wait for him to find his aim. He moved with the speed of a man half his age. The speed of a man who had survived a dozen skirmishes when the world was younger. His Winchester barked once. The man with the shotgun yelped as the stock of his weapon was shattered in his hands. He fell backward off his horse, clutching a bleeding hand. The younger rider reached for his nickel-plated gun. But Silas had the lever of the Winchester worked, and the barrel pointed at the boy's chest before he could clear leather. "Don't," Silas said. "You're too young to die for a bag of stolen rings." Elias Sterling didn't draw. He sat on his horse, his face twisted in a mask of pure rage. "You think you won?" Elias hissed. "My father has 50 men. He'll burn this whole valley to find that girl. You're a dead man. Silas, you just haven't stopped breathing yet." "Tell your father I'm done running," Silas said. "If he wants the gold, tell him to come himself. Tell him the Blackwood mine is calling for him." Elias turned his horse. He didn't look back as he led his men away, the wounded rider groaning in the dust. Silas didn't move until the dust settled. He felt the adrenaline leave his body, replaced by a deep, hollow ache. He went inside and moved the table. Clara climbed out, her face pale. "They'll come back. With more." "I know," Silas said. "We have to run," she whispered. "No," Silas said, looking at the gold on the table. "You can't outrun a curse, Clara. You have to break it." That night, Silas didn't sleep. He took the heavy pouch and a shovel. He rode out to the edge of the devil's throat. He didn't bury the gold. That would just leave it for someone else to find. He stood at the edge of the abyss, the wind howling up from the darkness like the voices of the people Sterling had robbed. He looked at the coiled snake on the coins. He thought about the blood spilled to mint them. He opened the bag. He didn't hesitate. He poured the gold into the canyon. He watched the coins disappear into black, the sound of them hitting the rocks far below lost to the wind. When he returned, he told Clara to gather her things. "Where are we going?" she asked. "To the one place the judge can't reach," Silas said. "To the truth." They didn't head for the mountains. They headed for the city, for the territorial governor. Silas knew he was signing his own death warrant by coming out of hiding. He knew the judge had friends in high places, but he also knew that he had something the judge didn't. He had a witness. The journey took 6 days. They rode through the night, sticking to the dry washes and the hidden trails Silas had used during the war. They lived on hardtack and the hope of something better. Twice, they saw riders on the horizon. Twice, they hid in the brush, hearts pounding, until the danger passed. When they reached the governor's mansion in Carson City, Silas looked like a ghost. His clothes were stiff with salt and dust. His beard was a wild thicket of gray, but his eyes were clear. He didn't ask for a lawyer. He asked for a priest and a stenographer. For 10 hours, Clara talked. She told him everything. The names, the dates, the locations of the shallow graves where the traitors had been buried so Sterling could claim their land. And Silas? He stood by the door. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. His presence was a testimony. The man who knew the judge's secrets and had finally decided to speak. Justice in the West isn't a fast thing. It's a slow, grinding wheel. The judge wasn't arrested that night, but the seed was planted. The Blackwood Gold became a scandal that even Sterling's money couldn't bury. One by one, his regulators disappeared into the night, unwilling to hang for a man whose empire was rotting from the inside. 3 months later, Silas sat on his porch. The ranch was still quiet. The wind still hollowed out the world. "The judge is gone, Silas," she said. "He took his own life before the marshals reached the door. They say they found him in that cellar, surrounded by empty ledgers." Silas nodded. He didn't feel joy. He just felt the weight lift. "What will you do now?" he asked. "The state is returning the land," she said. "The families, the ones left, they're going home. I'm going with them. To help." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small object. It was a gold coin, the last one, the one Silas had missed in the bag. "I found this in my boot," she said. "I was going to throw it away, but I thought maybe it should stay here, as a reminder." Silas looked at the coin. He looked at the coiled snake. Then he took it from her hand. He didn't look at it long. With a flick of his thumb, he tossed it into the high grass of the pasture. "The earth has enough reminders," Silas said. "The grass will grow over it. The rain will wash it deep. Eventually, it'll just be a rock again." Clara smiled. It was the first real smile Silas had seen in years. I suppose you're right, she said. She stayed for coffee. It was bitter and strong, but for the first time, it didn't taste like regret. They talked about the weather. They talked about the horses. They talked about the things that people talk about when the war is finally over. When she left, Silas stood by the gate and watched the wagon disappear. He knew that his story wasn't done. Out here, the West always finds a new way to test a man. But as the sun began to dip behind the Sierra peaks, Silas Thorne felt something he hadn't felt in 20 years. He felt light. Maybe that's the real secret of the West. It's not about how much gold you find. It's about what you're willing to leave behind. If the story touched something in you, if it made you think about the things we carry and the things we let go, give it a like. Share it with someone who's fighting their own shadows. And don't forget to subscribe, because there are 1,000 more stories buried in this dust, and I'd like to tell them to you. Until the next trail, keep your eyes on the horizon and your heart on the truth. The sun is coming up, and out here, that's more than enough. Take care of yourselves, and take care of each other. We'll see you in the next one.